Hello there, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, whenever it is that you are watching this video. So this is one of the video series that I'm going to do online. We will have some lessons that are face-to-face and some lessons that are online. This is one of those ones that we will be doing here. So this video is going into already the new part of the chapter, which is Kingdom Plantae. So we went through this, kind of had an overview and introduction to Plantae during our last face-to-face lesson. This is to kind of restate some of those points that were from the overview, and also to go into each of the groups of plants in Kingdom Plantae, and hopefully you'll be able to learn a lot from these videos, and I hope this is beneficial for your learning. Please also use the worksheet that I have prepared for you. Either use the hard copy that was provided, or you can even use the soft copy that I have uploaded in the Google Classroom to kind of guide you through and take note of which ones are the important points you need to remember and which points are kind of just there so you know a little bit more. It might help you in your future, especially if you're going to go into a biology related degree. Okay, so without further ado, let us continue to the lesson. So we are going into Kingdom Plantae. So we are still in domain Eukarya. We're talking about Kingdom Plantae. The objectives for this part of the video is that you would be able to describe the unique characteristics of Plantae, and that you would be able to classify Plantae into 4 groups. And we'll see how we classify it into those 4 groups in just a little bit. So, if you're ready. Unique characteristics of Plantae. So you know Plantae is plants, all those plants. So they are multicellular eukaryotes. They are autotrophs, which means they contain photosynthetic pigments such as chlorophylls A and chlorophylls B, xanthophylls, and carotenes. So these are the different types of photosynthetic pigments. And you'll learn more about it when you go into the chapter regarding photosynthesis. For now, we are kind of just knowing that, okay, different plants can have different pigments. They can have more than one in their leaves, and these are some of them. And then they use cellulose as a major component of their cell walls. Their food storage is in the form of starch. And they form cell plate during cytokinesis of cell division. So if you remember when we learned about mitosis, meiosis in last semester, we talk about animal cells forming cleavage furrows, but plant cells form cell plate. And they can reproduce either sexually or asexually, some plants do both, and their life cycle shows alternation of generations. Right, so this part about alternation of generations, it's something that we covered in the last face-to-face class, but in case you don't really understand it or you want to hear me reiterate it, you can go ahead and continue with the video. Okay, alternation of generations means that organism will spend part of their lives in a multicellular haploid generation and another part in a multicellular diploid generation. In the examples of us, like humans, we have a haploid generation, but it is unicellular. In plants, both haploid and diploid will have multicellular organisms. So in the haploid generation, you have the gametophyte generation. So plants that produce gamete. That gives rise to haploid male and female gametes by mitosis. In the diploid generation, on the other hand, you will have sporophyte generation, so plants that produce spores that give rise to haploid spores by meiosis. So this is a diagram that is used to illustrate the alternation of generations. You can start with the gametophyte. In this diagram, the explanation starts with the gametophyte, which is the haploid generation. It's saying that the gametophyte will produce gametes by mitosis. It becomes male gamete or sperm, or female gamete, also called egg. These two haploid gametes, which is male and female, will fuse to form a zygote in a process called fertilization that you've already learned about many times. Fertilization produces a zygote. The zygote is that fertilized egg, And then it will develop by mitosis into sporophytes. So from zygote, divide by mitosis into embryo, divide by more mitosis into sporophyte. And then it will continue its normal life cycle, growing, photosynthesizing. If it's an angiosperm, it might produce flowers. Okay, this is already part of the diploid sporophyte generation. So this sporophyte, when the time is right, when it's mature enough, when it has enough food, when the conditions are right, it's going to have its special cells called the sporophyte, special cells of the sporophyte. It will undergo meiosis to form spores. So undergo meiosis, produce spores. Spores are haploid. And then each spore will have the potential to undergo mitosis and develop into gametophyte. So usually these spores are released from the original plant, okay, and then they will go somewhere else and grow into gametophyte. When it's gametophyte, it will continue on with the stage. Sometimes you can start with the gametophyte, sometimes we start with the sporophyte. The reason that diagram started with the gametophyte is because we are going into examples of the first example that we will have is bryophytes, which are mosses. And mosses, the dominant generation is gametophyte. So when we talk about those, we usually start with the gametophyte generation. So in this case, both gametophyte and sporophyte are very different in morphology, which is when you look at the structure, it's quite different. So on the left, top left here, you see the gametophyte of Polytrichum species. On the right is it's a textbook diagram, okay, a textbook illustration of Polytrichum, where this is the gametophyte stage, and on top of it is the sporophyte stage. You can show the alternation of generations in a circular diagram like we did 2 slides ago, or you can show it in a flowchart like this. This is illustrating the same points. Okay, you have multicellular gametophyte, mitosis, male gamete, female gamete, fertilization, zygote. From zygote, it can develop through mitosis into a multicellular sporophyte. Lepas tu, bila dia sedia, dia akan ada mother cells within the sporangium. Mother cells will undergo meiosis with spores, which are already haploid. Okay, same process, just a more square flowchart. In this alternation of generations, in your diploid sporophyte will have a sporangium, which is multicellular organs that produces spores. In that sporangium, diploid cells called sporocytes, okay, so these can be megasporocytes, microsporocytes, will undergo meiosis and form the haploid spores. Haploid spores will divide mitotically and grow into multicellular haploid gametophytes. When those haploid gametophytes grow, they will produce the haploid male and female gametes by mitosis. Male and female gametes are also called the sperm and the egg. Male and female gametes undergo fertilization to form diploid zygote, and that diploid zygote will divide mitotically to produce a multicellular diploid sporophyte. Okay, so that is about the alternation of generations, which is something quite unique to plants. Next, we will talk about the classification of Plantae. So there's so many different types of plants, and you know that we can categorize or classify them into 4 major groups. But how exactly do we go and classify them into 4 major groups based on morphology alone? Remember, we're not going into the genetics of things yet. I know when I was teaching you, I do sometimes mention the DNA, the genetics, but in your syllabus now, we focus a lot on classification based on morphology. Jadi kita tengok luaran dia, lepas tu kita cuba untuk memisahkannya kepada beberapa kategori. So let's look at how we classify plants into 4 major groups. First, we look at whether it is non-vascular or vascular, which means does it have a proper vascular system? Does it have real xylem and phloem? If it is non-vascular, it doesn't have any xylem or phloem, it is under group Bryophytes. Within group Bryophytes, we will have phylum Bryophyta, phylum Hepatophyta, and phylum Anthocerophyta. If it is vascular, we look at whether it is seedless or seed. If it does not produce seed, it is seedless, so it goes into Pteridophytes. Pteridophytes, we have phylum Lycophyta and phylum Pterophyta. If your plant does have a vascular system and it does produce seed, then we can divide it into two more groups, which is the gymnosperms, where the seeds are naked, they are not enclosed by an ovary, or if their seeds are enclosed by an ovary, it is a protected seed, then it is an angiosperm. Okay, so there's two groups if it's seeded. Gymnosperms for naked seeds, angiosperms for protected seeds. Under gymnosperms, you can divide that into four phylum: Cycadophyta, Coniferophyta, Ginkgophyta, and Gnetophyta. Within angiosperms, there is phylum Anthophyta, and then you can further classify that into two classes, class Dicotyledonnae and class Monocotyledonnae. So that is pretty much it for the first bit of Plantae. Okay, we went through the unique characteristics of kingdom Plantae, especially focusing on the alternation of generations. And we also look at how to classify the organisms in kingdom Plantae into four groups. Now take note, when you are doing your assignment on the phylogenetic tree, which you will be graded on, this is how you should classify Plantae. You should divide them into non-vascular, vascular, seedless, seed not enclosed by ovary, and seed enclosed by ovary. More details on that when I do the assignment video. Right, that is it for now. We will continue with bryophytes in the next video, and I thank you very, very much for your time. I'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.